Brothers and sisters, let me tell you, this is how valuable you are. I think the universe would hide you in its pockets so that you would never be scratched and never receive a ding or a dent.
I'm preaching you just like I would have in the old days, just minus a few characters in the story.
There's no mention of God or Jesus.
Can I get a Darwin?
Prepare yourself for a journey of discovery. The book has been written, the speeches have been done, and now it is time to go between the pages with Jerry DeWitt and Bobby C. Today's date is August 25th, 2016. My name is Bobby C., and once again I am joined by my amazing co-host, the one and the only, Mr. Jerry D.
Hashtag preacher hair.
Hashtag preacher hair. That's a good hashtag. Hey, Jerry D.
Hey, man, I missed you.
I missed you too. You know, I don't know. It's getting to the point where it feels like it's just taking us longer and longer to get on the air.
It really does feel that way, and I noticed today as I was texting you to let you know that I was where I was supposed to be when I was supposed to be there, that I had not texted you
in a week
since the same time last week.
I don't know. I'm starting to feel the love, I'm telling you.
I know. Well, everybody needs to know we communicate a lot of other ways besides text.
Yes, that is true. That is true. So don't go around thinking that Bobby and Jerry do not communicate during the week, because we do.
We do. A lot, actually.
Yeah, a lot. Matter of fact, I think we talk several times each day, I think. It just happens.
Every day. Yeah.
It just happens to not be on text messaging.
That's right. We've got our own secret Hope After Faith communication formula.
Yeah, that's what it is. We have the special Hope After Faith communication device.
That's exactly right.
It's like
a
Star
Dick
Trek
Tracy decoder ring. It's special.
It's very cool. Well, listen, guys, if you want to get your questions or comments on the air, you can live tweet during the show at Hope After Faith, or you can join us in the chat room on Spreaker.com. It's good to see Trav, James, Todd, and Angie in there. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. Welcome to the show. We look forward to any contribution that you might have today. Today's episode is the final part of a 3-part series titled What Most Christians Don't Know About the New Testament. In this episode, we'll be asking the question, does grace exist in the Bible? You know, we've gotten a lot of feedback from people who are actually enjoying this series, Jerry. The people who are listening to it and rewinding it and listening to it again. I mean, this has gotten pretty good reviews.
It really has, and I glanced at the numbers. Imagine that, me glancing at the numbers, but I glanced at the numbers earlier, and if I'm not mistaken, I think part 1 probably has the most listens of anything that we've done so far. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, people are really digging this series. So this might be something we need to do more often, is jump into a series like this.
Imagine that the people who listen to us would be interested in religion.
Go figure, huh?
This is such a surprise to me.
I know.
Such a surprise.
I know, but people are really, really enjoying it. Now, folks, normally we would do the Stump the Preacher on this week's episode, but due to the limited time that we have with Jerry, he's still traveling. We've decided to put it off till next week when Jerry is home safe, and we are not so pressed for time. So if you have not gotten your voicemail to us, we have 9 so far, by the way, Jerry.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you have an additional week. So you're welcome.
Wow.
Get over there and leave your 3 things for your Stump the Preacher. We've got 9 so far. Let me tell you, these are doozies, man. I'll tell you what, Jerry, they're starting to figure this out.
Are they really?
Oh, yeah. We've got some doozies.
And we've only done it once. I mean, you would think they'd give me a chance for at least a couple of episodes.
Oh, no. There's some good ones that sent in, and I'm like, well, he's going to have fun with that one. Yeah.
Makes me nervous.
I know. And also, before we actually get into today's topic, you know, we always talk about, when we talk about this, like, you guys will get some really cool prizes.
Yes.
But we never really say what the prizes are.
Yeah, because we're hoping nobody gets it, and we'll just keep all the good stuff for ourselves.
So, just to let you guys know, if you stump the preacher, you will be receiving a I Stumped the Preacher t-shirt and a signed copy of Hope After Faith.
And it's a one-off. I mean, we're not going to make the T-shirt until you stump me. So when you get it, you will have the only one that exists at that time.
Yeah, until someone else stumps him.
Till somebody else. And then it'll be, you'll have one of two. So it's pretty awesome.
Right. So these T-shirts are not even made yet. So once you stump him, the next thing we do is we create the T-shirt just for you. And we'll get an address and everything for you, and you'll receive a T-shirt and a signed copy of Hope After Faith from Mr. Jerry DeWitt.
Yeah, and we talked about maybe figuring out some vocal, some audio thing.
I think we were talking about maybe you and I sitting down and doing a voicemail that they can use as like a voicemail for their phone. Hi, this is Jerry D or whatever, and you've called so and so's phone because, well, he's awesome, or she is awesome. Are they?
Exactly.
See, did I miss any? Okay.
I think you're there.
Okay.
I think you got everything.
So that's some of the things that you will get if you stump the preacher. So if you have not got your voicemail in yet, go to 6307 DEWITT 6307 DeWitt, and let's see if you can get you a I Stumped the Preacher T-shirt and a signed copy of Hope After Faith.
Do I get a T-shirt, or do I have to go around shirtless if I get stumped? How does that work?
I think if you gave people the shirt off your back, the voicemails would definitely fly in. Now, folks, I can guarantee you right now the shirt will be black.
It will be a dark color. That is for sure. Yeah. It's 90% certain it'll be black. The other 10% of my wardrobe is made up of something as dark as black. So yeah, you're exactly right.
I know. Trav said in the chat room, when I meet that second person in a Stump the Preacher T-shirt, we'll marry.
Exactly. I don't blame them.
We will have a I Stumped the Preacher wedding. I got it.
I'll do the marriage.
There you go. See?
Yeah, there you go.
It's working out.
That could be the other thing. You know what? Since we don't really know how schedule's going to work out, whoever stumps the preacher, I'll either do their wedding or their funeral.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather have you do my wedding, though, so that I could at least enjoy it.
Yeah, but at least you would, die knowing that you were going to have, hashtag preacher hair doing your funeral. That would make passing into oblivion a little easier, wouldn't it?
It would.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be nice?
It definitely would, especially to have hashtag preacher hair on all the invitations.
Exactly. That's exactly cool. Right. Hashtag. Yeah, that's right.
And James said, just make sure you don't fall into the grave. All right.
Oh,
boy,
oh God.
You can tell James has been listening from the beginning.
James is wonderful. I'll get to
on the
see
ball,
James buddy. Eventually.
All right. So if you're ready, Jerry, let's get into this week's topic.
I'm not ready.
Does grace exist in the Bible? Now, most people would tell you, yeah, all you got to do is read it. It's right there in the book of James. It's all over where it's talking about grace, but there's some conflicting views inside the Bible about, is it by works? Is it by faith? Is it, what's it by? So I'm looking forward to you diving into this. I'm going to kind of shut up and let you take the reins of this thing, and I'll just chime in when I need to.
Well, feel free to interject whenever you're ready. I'll try to be fast, but I'll try to make sense, at least, sense as it works in my mind. But I do know that our time is limited, so I'll try to be kind of quick. So if you have your Bibles with you today, if you'll turn to the book of Romans, the 4th chapter, penned by the Apostle Paul, supposedly, who knows? And so here's where I want to come from, all right? I'm not a theologian. And I'm a self-made man as far as a minister is concerned. I was called into the ministry at 16, 17 years of age and had to work my way through a lot of these theological concepts somewhat on my own. There were different ministers that I reached out to and got advice from. But I say that not just to put myself down or to put myself in place theologically, but also to say what matters to me is what works. I'm not as interested in the cut and dry rules of apologetic concepts or apologetic theory. What I'm most interested in is how does this work in real life?
Right.
How does this really work? And it gives me goosebumps right now. I could speak in tongues if I wanted to. because it's bringing up these memories from now over almost 30 years ago, where that was the cry of my heart, was how does this work? Let's make this work. It's fine to go to church on Sundays and Wednesdays and hear a message and feel the doodads or the goosebumps or whatever you would call it during the services and feel good about yourself because you got dressed and you went. But it's another thing on the days that you're not in church to actually live the Christian life, to find ways to make it work. So to me, it's all about how does it really work.
Right. So I'm in Romans chapter 4. What verse should we start with?
All right, let's start with verse number 1.
Got it. All right.
Okay, so Paul says, "What shall we say then that Abraham our father, as pertaining to the flesh, hath found?" We could dig into all of this, but I'm going to just kind of skip across a few things. Paul says, "For if Abraham were justified by works, he hath whereof to glory, but not before God. For what saith the Scripture? Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness." So Paul is completely dismantling the entire Jewish concept of trying to earn credit in the eyes of God by your works, and is saying that even Abraham, which was actually before Judaism, all right, Abraham,
right, yeah.
Was there before Judaism was put in place,
right?
That even Abraham pleased God simply by his faith, simply by believing. So he goes on in verse 4 and says, "Now to him that worketh is the reward not reckoned of grace, but of debt." So in other words, he's saying if someone thinks that they're pleasing God and they're getting something from God because of their good works, well, don't call that grace. Don't say that that's a gift from God, because actually God is in your debt because you're doing something for him. If you come over and you cut my yard, and I walk out and say, "Here's $50," I can't say that that $50 is a gift.
Right.
Because you cut my yard.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've done something, and I'm doing something in return. But if I just walk across the street and just hand you $50 for literally no reason whatsoever, now I can call that a gift. All right?
Yeah.
So keep that word gift in mind. Okay.
It is funny because you're reading from the King James. I actually have Ashley's NIV Disciple Study Bible here that I'm using that she does for Bible study. And it's amazing how different the NIV is.
It sounds
from different words, the way it's set up, everything is different.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Okay.
Now, at any time that you need to interject from the NIV, please do. If you see something that jumps out at you,
do me a favor and read the second verse for me again.
Verse number 2.
Right.
For if Abraham were justified by works, he hath whereof to glory, but not before God.
Okay, so it's relatively close because mine says, if in fact Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God.
Right.
And 4 said, now when a man works, his wages are not credited to him as a gift, but as an obligation.
Right.
It's just
That's
different.
right.
It amazes me how it's worded.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely worded differently, but with good intention, with the intentions of making it more understandable.
Right.
And I do like that.
All right. Sorry.
So
continue on.
No, not at all. So in verse 5, so he says, but to him that worketh not, but believeth on him that justifieth the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. Okay? So his faith is what gives him credit. The fact that he believes, even though he's not doing the works as may be described by the law of Moses, his faith alone makes him look righteous. So here's, you have two different plans. You have plan A and plan B.
Right.
Plan A, a person learns the rules of, say, Judaism, the law of Moses, and does those things in order to earn credit before God. And if he does those things, he gets credit.
So God owes him something.
Yes. So God owes him something because he's working the plan.
I have never thought of that. Holy hell. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Mind blown
Right.
over here. Hashtag mind blown. you
So-
know how many times I've read that and never saw that God owed me?
Yeah, because you're working his plan.
Wow.
He's saying, because that's the whole point of the covenant. That's the whole point of the contract. The contract is God says, under the old covenant, or as we would call it, the old covenant,
Right.
if you do thus and so, then I will do thus and so. So you have one part of the contract, God has
And
the
he
other
has
part of
the
the
other.
contract. And if you go do those things, then God is obligated to do those things.
Ain't that something?
Isn't that cool? So,
Well.
so the whole thing about Plan B, the plan with Paul, is Paul says, no, that's not the way that it works anymore, and that wasn't the way it even worked with Abraham before Judaism. The way that it works is that God just gives you credit because of your faith, because you believe. And the fact that you believe, God says, okay, I'm going to see you as a righteous person. And so in verse 6, and I'm going to try to go through this kind of quickly, but in verse 6, Paul references back to King David, Old Testament times, and says, even as David also describeth the blessedness of the man unto whom God imputeth righteousness without works. So real quick, Paul simply says, even David in the Psalms, even David talked about how great it is to be someone that God would consider righteous or upstanding even without doing these other works. That God would just declare you righteous because you believed him. Declare you righteous just because of your faith. And so all Paul's doing here is trying to establish that this isn't a new idea, but this actually existed before Judaism, in particular before the Judaism that the people of Paul's era are following. Everybody with me?
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Number 7.
So in verse 7 it says, saying, blessed are those whose iniquities are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord will not impute sin. Then Paul asked the question, cometh this blessedness then upon the circumcision only, or upon the uncircumcision also? For we say that faith was reckoned to Abraham for righteousness. Now the whole point behind this is Paul is justifying his declaration that these Gentiles who do not follow the law are righteous in God's eyes.
Right.
And the reason that they're righteous,
uncircumcised being the Gentiles, right?
the uncircumcised
Is
being the
Gentiles.
Gentiles,
Okay.
correct. All right. And so the reason he's saying that they're righteous is because of their faith. All right. And he's saying this even worked for Abraham. Father Abraham, before Judaism, he was declared righteous in God's eyes simply because of his faith. Okay. So with that established, let's jump around just a little bit. Okay. Now let's jump all the way to Romans 10. Romans 10, and read the famous scriptures 10, 9
Yep.
through 10.
Yep,
Okay,
got it.
ready? So Paul says that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Okay, so as we all know, these verses right here over time morph into evangelical doctrine.
Oh, yeah.
They morph into the methodology of how people get saved, particularly in a, say, Baptist type church.
Now,
right?
now let me ask you something, Jerry.
Sure.
This verse that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, with your heart that you believe that you're justified. Now that's how you're saved. Right? So this would be why they made me as a young child stand in front of the entire congregation and do my public profession of faith.
Yes. This is where that idea comes from. This is a verse that's used to support that idea.
Right.
Yes.
So if this is saying that I'm saved, why the need for baptism?
Oh gosh, that's a total different
Okay,
subject.
sorry. We'll just keep going then. Because
But we will get there.
It just seems that baptism is works.
Right.
That if we're saved just by professing this, the baptism to me is useless.
Right.
Because you're saved just by saying it.
Well, what makes it confusing is there's a time that Jesus says, "He that believeth and is baptized, the same shall be saved."
Oh, okay.
So they have to deal with that complication by adding that step into the formula to cover all the bases.
It is. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll try not to interrupt.
No, you're doing great. That's a great question. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so we've established that Paul's doctrine, and we remember from the last two episodes that Paul's doctrine eventually loses out in the fight with James and Peter's doctrine.
Oh, yeah.
But Paul's doctrine is saying to us that God declares you righteous, sinless. He declares that of you just because of your faith. But now we hear at the end of Romans that he that believeth, all right, that with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Now, there's a whole lot of history behind this verse, and very quickly we could tear it up and show how it's being completely misused today, but that's not what's important. What's important is that from this verse, and from verses like this, modern-day Christianity teaches that faith is a choice, that we make a choice to believe, that we choose to believe. Because we can physically make the confession with our mouth, then we are choosing to believe and make that confession.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess if they enjoy being wrong.
Okay, and so here's the thing. All right, now why is that important? Why is it important for people to believe today that faith is a choice? All right, well, let's back up real quick. Because if you don't make faith the centerpiece, then you can't claim God's grace. You can't claim that God is imputing righteousness to you, that God's calling you okay, if you don't have faith as the centerpiece. But if faith is not a choice, then not having faith would also not be a choice.
Exactly.
All right?
Yeah.
Now, how does this get important? Because faith must be a choice. If faith is not a choice, then the punishment for not believing would be immoral.
Wow.
It has to be a choice. In modern-day Christianity, it has to be a choice that you choose to believe or not believe, because it is your choosing to not believe that justifies the punishment that they believe God will inflict.
So, according to them, you and I are choosing to not believe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
And they could quote a few.
Oh yeah, and justify it through their scriptures.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they could justify it through, that a portion of faith is given to every man. There's several verses that could be used, but it's very important to them that faith and believing is a choice, or otherwise it becomes immoral to not, to punish someone for something that they're not doing.
Yeah.
Right? Not doing. So that's what becomes important. So now the question is, and this is where we get to our point of, is there really such thing as grace in the Bible, particularly in the New Testament doctrine? If they are right, if modern-day Christianity is right, and faith is a choice, then is making that choice not works? Wouldn't making a choice be works?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be something that you are then doing that puts God back in your debt?
Yeah.
So if faith itself, if believing, if having faith itself is actually a work, then there really is no such
grace.
thing as grace.
Wow. Y'all really need to make this whole hashtag mind blown a thing. Jerry, how many pastors do you think really put this together?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know how many would put it together. I remember where I was at when it came together for me. I was driving down the middle of DeRidder on Pine Street and was about to turn into Popeyes. About to make a left-hand turn across two lanes into Popeyes. And all these pieces just suddenly fit together for me. And what I realized was that what Paul may have actually been teaching was actually predestination. See, that's where all this comes about, because if you back up and you say, no, faith is actually the gift. The gift isn't just salvation. Faith is the gift. God gives you faith. That's His grace. By His grace, you don't deserve it. You haven't earned it. His unmerited favor towards you gives you the gift of faith and allows you to believe. Well, then that's not a choice at all. If that's not a choice, then not believing is also not a choice. So if you don't believe, then all that could mean in that economy is that God has chosen for you to not believe. And if God has chosen for you not to believe, thus not giving you the gift of faith, thus you can't have salvation, then how can that be held against you?
Right. How can He punish you for something He chose for you?
Which is the reason why modern-day Christianity, which has actually evolved above and beyond the barbaric ideas of deity from even first-century Christians. Let me say it this way. Our idea of God is nicer than the ideas of God that people have had in the past, obviously. And so we want God to be good and we want God to be fair, as we as a civilization now see fairness and goodness. And so that creates this complication to where we have to make all of this free will, we have to make all of this a choice, or else we're actually, as a civilization, kinder than God. Because we wouldn't punish someone with eternal hellfire for doing something that they had no choice about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the reason this gets important to me is because so many times I'm criticized as saying, you're choosing not to believe. You're choosing to do that. Well, what I know from my personal experience and from the quote-unquote testimonies of countless other atheists is that not believing simply is a realization that you make about yourself. It's a realization that you have. It somewhat dawns on you in a moment of clarity and honesty that you just don't believe. You're just honest with yourself and be like, I just don't believe.
Now, Trav said in the chat room, so since I became born again at age of 17, but now I'm an atheist, does that mean God's effing with me? You're saved, my child. Just kidding.
Well, from some people's theology, yes. In some people's way of thinking, that would be exactly right. In some people's way of thinking, say, for instance, let's just pick on the Baptist for a little bit. By most fundamentalists, most evangelicals, they would say that if, once saved, always saved.
Right.
And that it doesn't matter where you're at in your belief right now, you'll come back around by the end. Yeah. And that'd be proof that you really were saved in the beginning. If you don't come back around at the end, that'd be really proof saved. You wasn't saved in the beginning.
Right.
But then you've got other forms of Christianity, such as what's called primitive Baptist, which is Calvinist. And I've seen them, showing that, yes, this Paulinian doctrine is more Calvinistic, that, God just chooses who He chooses. And it doesn't make sense to us, and there's no evidence on the outside to show one way or the other why God would choose one person over the other. And Paul himself in the epistles teaches about there being vessels of honor and vessels of dishonor. So it's very much so let's jump one last time. I know our time's getting short. Is this okay? We doing all right?
No, we're doing fine. We could probably do about 20 more minutes and then we have to get into our closing.
Okay. So let's jump over to Ephesians chapter 2.
Okay, hang on. I'm going with you. Ephesians.
So while you're moving there, let's go back and let's just hit this thing that for me.
All right, I'm there.
For me, my atheism was a realization. It was a moment of honesty where I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be real about this, I really just don't believe.
Right.
I really don't. Okay. Well, maybe the same thing could happen about believing, that you just realize, oh, you know what? Wait a minute. I really do believe. I really do believe that. Well, then that would not be a choice. That would also be a realization, which would mean that that was supernaturally imparted to you. Thus, you had received the gift of faith, and apparently you're going to be saved. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's all things that you're not choosing to do. So in Ephesians chapter 2, starting at verse 1, Paul says, "And you," speaking to the church at Ephesus, "and you hath he quickened," brought back to life, "who were dead in trespasses and sin." So you were spiritually dead. He brought you back to life. You were dead in your trespasses and sin, but he's brought you to life. Verse number 2, "Where in time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience." So there's a whole set of children that are classified as, people classified as children of disobedience. "Among whom also we all had our conversation in times past in the lust of the flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But God, okay? All the emphasis is on God.
Right.
But God, who is rich in mercy, for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Christ. By grace ye are saved." Okay? So far, the believer has no responsibility in any of this.
Right.
And has no credit in any of this. God is just doing it to them and for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The same way that God would have raised Christ from the dead. A dead man can't resurrect himself. Someone outside has to resurrect him. A person who's dead in sin can't make themselves righteous. Someone has to do it from the outside. So that's what Paul's teaching here. Verse number 6, he says, "And hath raised us up together, made us sit together in heavenly places with Christ Jesus, that in the ages to come he might shew the exceeding riches of his grace in his kindness towards us through Christ. For by grace are ye saved, through faith, that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God." So what is the gift of God here? Is it the being saved part? No, it's the faith part.
Yeah.
That's the gift of God.
Mm-hmm.
Verse number 9, "Not of works, lest any man should boast.
Yep.
For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, with God," now check this out, "which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them." So all of the goodness that we've got going on right now, God declared that was going to happen before time.
Right.
Declared that before we were doing it. So that's predestination.
Yes.
That's predetermined, preordination.
That's,
all right?
that's
so
Calvinism.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So then in verse 11 he says, "Wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time ye were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Christ. For he is our peace, who hath made both one, hath broken down the middle wall partition between us." So now the reason that this is important is that over and over, Paul is saying salvation is all on God's side, not on man's side.
Mm-hmm.
The contention that I'm making, so none of that's new. Calvinism has existed at least since John Calvin, right? None of this is new. What I'm injecting in this is that people of yesterday believed that things that happened, what they thought internally, were spiritual when they were actually still just as physical as any other action.
Yep.
It's just a chemical reaction. It's an electrical response within the brain. So these things that are this thing that is considered faith, if it is a choice, and even all modern Christianity tells us that if it's a choice,
right,
then that is what we understand today is an action. It is a work. It is something that a person does. So modern Christianity, by insisting upon free will, has absolutely painted themselves into a corner where even the idea of faith becomes works. Even the very act of believing
Yeah.
is now a choice, now an act that they are performing. Thus, they have written themselves out of the grace economy of God altogether.
And I bet they don't even realize it.
They don't even realize it. What this is akin to me, is that in the Gospels, we see stories being told of people that now we would classify as having either some type of mental illness or some other type of disease that would cause them to act in ways that the writers at the time deemed to be devil possession. Because they couldn't separate, they separated physical from mental. But what we now know is that mental is just as physical as anything else.
So let me ask you something, Jerry.
Yes, sir.
If they actually started realizing this, do you think they would admit it, or do you think it's something that they would just throw on the back burner like I did for years when I would see something in the Bible that didn't feel good to me? I just threw it on the back burner and didn't worry about it. Oh, God will explain it later.
I think most of them will have to push it to the back burner.
And I think if they realized this, it would forever change the face of Christianity.
It would forever change the face of Christianity, and so there's a positive side to it. I think it would really change it in a very positive way. Earlier on in this series, I've talked about Mike Williams, Jeff Robertson out of Houston, Texas, the Gospel Revolution.
Right.
You know, if I had to choose, if they said, okay, we're gonna fill the world with Christians, but you get to choose what type of Christian. Well, I would choose them. You know, that would be who I would probably choose. Because they live lives exactly like we live. Now, the flip side of this is that when you take away the free will, when you take away the choice, you lose the sales side of evangelism. You lose the sales side of church building. You lose part of your business model, a very important part of your business model.
Yes, you do.
Because a major motivation for the show is to motivate people to make the choice.
Exactly.
And if the choice doesn't really count for whichever direction you take this, then the show doesn't count, and you don't need the show then.
And the show's what's most important.
And the show is what keeps things moving forward.
Yes, like James said, if Calvinism is true, evangelism is essentially pointless.
That's exactly right. Now, of course, you know, Calvinists will make arguments of why they still have churches and why they still have pastors and why they even still have evangelists. And it's mostly a little bit of wordplay, and it's a little bit of gymnastics to say, you know, we're still being used as a mechanism to awaken the people that God has foreordained, and that's why there's different types of calls. The minister makes the general call, but the Holy Spirit makes the specific call to the person who's actually ordained, and so there's all types of ways that you can manipulate this and try to justify your own existence, you know, within these institutions. But the point simply is that if faith is a choice, then grace, as we have been taught it, does not exist within Christianity. Bottom line.
So there you go. That's the answer to the question. Does grace exist in the Bible? No.
No, not if faith is a choice.
Yeah.
And if faith is not a choice, if you admit that faith is not a choice but is a gift, now you're out of business and you've got no reason to be jacking me around.
You might as well shut the doors, baby.
And leave me alone.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so we are 20 minutes away from ending tonight's show. What is the wrap up, Jerry? What is the close up here?
So the close up for this is that if there's any of our Hope After Faith people out there making the transition, working their way, you know, trying to feel better about where they're at, if you feel like what's hanging on to you is a little bit of a doubt within you of, well, maybe if I had chose this or chose that, maybe if I had tried a little harder with this choice or pushed a little harder, then maybe I'd seen something that I missed. if this train of logic makes sense to you, then where it is going is into the station of complete and total emotional and psychological rest. That there really is nothing different that you could have done or could be doing, because the entire methodology that is being promoted is flawed, and always was flawed long before we got a hold of it.
Right.
And so it's okay to take a deep breath and to feel a sense of relief, and to allow that lingering doubt to just eventually evaporate over time, as all such things do, because you have done all that you could do. There wasn't anything left to do.
Well, once again, Jerry D., you have left me mind blown over here. You know, this has been such an amazing series. You know, you have pointed out so many things that I've read this Bible. 6 times I've read this Bible, and never ever put these things together to present them as you have, and walk away going, huh? You know, just being left speechless, just a log sitting there going, wow, how in the heck did I not see this?
Well, I appreciate that, Bobby, and you're very welcome. And I always want to give credit to so many wonderful people in my life. Robert Rutherford, as I've already mentioned, Mike Williams, and Jeff, Carlton Pearson, even Lynn Hiles. There's so many ministers all along the way that gave me little bits and pieces, or gave me really, really big pieces, you know, that I'm totally plagiarizing. I know how good it feels to see pieces come together in ways that we've never seen it before. And if I've got just 30 seconds, I've got to answer this one question I just saw come up in the chat room, because it's key. And the question simply was, can someone choose to not accept grace? And what's important, and this would be a great summary, is that the gift is not grace. The giving of the gift is grace, is graciousness. It's grace. A person is showing grace to give the gift. The gift is faith. And that is the question. Can a person choose to not accept the faith? Modern day Christianity says yes, and then that's why grace as a mechanism of salvation doesn't exist.
There you have it. There you have it. Grace does not exist in the Bible.
It definitely doesn't exist in the Bible when you look at it through modern Christian
exactly.
eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can't have it both ways.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry, for taking us through these last 3 weeks and going through this series. I can tell you it has really been an eye-opening experience for me. I just wish I could remember it all, so the next time my mom starts preaching to me, I could just sit her down. But it has been such an interesting series. And you know what? I'm hoping that in the future we'll get into more series like this as the show moves forward in the future. I'm sure there's plenty of series that we could get into that would leave me sitting over here mind blown again. So,
well,
thank you,
it's
buddy.
been my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for doing all that you do to make it happen, my friend.
Well, that was amazing. Well, folks, as we bring this week's show to a close, next week, we will definitely be doing another segment of Stump the Preacher. Keep in mind, there is a Stump the Preacher t-shirt, book, and voicemail in store for that person who has the ability to stump Jerry D. We have received so far 9 voicemails from you guys. So if you think you have what it takes to stump the preacher, call 6307-DEWITT. That's 6307-DEWITT. And just leave these 3 things: a name, location, and an item. And of course, we'll do like we did last time. We'll put them all in the hat. We'll draw a number. And if you are the person that stumps Jerry, you got some pretty cool things coming. Keep in mind that we could be found on Stitcher, Spreaker, and on iTunes. Speaking of Spreaker, Good Lord. Speaking of Spreaker, say that 3 times fast. If you are enjoying the show, please consider going over to Spreaker.com and following the show. Just go over there and click on follow, and you will get an update for anything that we do through Spreaker. And keep in mind, Spreaker does have a free app, so you can listen while you are on the go. Now, speaking of iTunes, Jerry, we had 3 5-star ratings, 2 from our fair country here and 1 from Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'd like to read these for you. I know you probably haven't had time to sit back and read these, so I will read these for you and just
Please
by
do.
all means give whatever commentary you need. The first one is from Sir Stomulus, that's how I'm going to say it. Wrote, "This is a fun one. I was an evangelical pastor's kid from the northern U.S., and there was a saying in our church, quote, 'We may be strange, but at least we're not like those southern Pentecostals. They're crazy.'"
That's fair.
After listening to a few of these episodes, I can say that's one of the only truths I learned in the church. I love their laid-back conversation, dripping with that honey and molasses southern charm. But don't let the accents fool you. They're actually really intelligent.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that.
Yes, so thank you for that, Mr. Sir Stomulus. That's Stomulus. I hope I said that right. Moving on. DBoo6801, that's DBOO6801, wrote, "Revelations in podcast form. Jerry D and Bobby C come across as the kindest, most accepting people. Good hearts, great minds, reasoned, and logical. Jerry has the voice of an angel.
Wow.
And his chemistry with Bobby is palpable."
That's wonderful.
Yeah, several times while listening to this, I had to rewind and re-listen. In the midst of their New Testament series, I am flummoxed by the explanations of the language and intent in the Bible. Subscribe to the podcast and join the family they are building. Thanks for all that you do. Love you guys and wish you all the best this one and only life has to offer. Thank you very much for that, D-Boo. Told you.
That's fantastic.
I'll tell you what, Jerry's voice, the voice of an angel.
The voice of an angel. I might have to figure out a way to use that to my advantage.
I'm pretty sure you'll figure out a way.
But which angel? I
Hey.
prefer for it to be Gabriel, but it's probably going to end up being Lucifer.
Lucifer, I'm telling you. Look, if anybody has a voice of Lucifer, it's me. All
You
right.
got a great voice.
And this one came in from our neighbors up north, from Canada. Bad Mojo wrote, "If you're on your way out of faith, are an atheist looking for some insight into the believer's world, this podcast is for you. Jerry D is a font of wisdom, and Bobby C is a thoughtful host." So thank you.
That's sweet.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It really is.
So these have been 3 amazing ratings and comments that we received from you guys. Thank you so very much, Sir Stomulus, DBoo6801, and Bad Mojo. If you want to join these 3 wonderful people in leaving us a 5-star rating and a comment, we will, of course, make sure we read it live on the air for our listeners to enjoy. So thank you very, very much for that. Jerry D, before I go to telling people where they can find us, do you have anything that you need to put out to our wonderful listeners tonight?
I think I'm doing good. I'm excited. I'm excited about being back in my own space
Your own
by
domain,
this time
huh?
next week. And
I know
and
you're
I'm
ready
really
to see home.
appreciative.
I know you're ready to see home.
I'm ready. I'm ready just to be in my own space. That is for sure.
Yeah, and lay in your own bed, huh? I hear you.
Yeah, that would be sweet. I don't know if that even happened, but that'd be great.
Well, I lay in a bed in your own home. How's that?
There you go. Yeah, that's close enough.
Well, folks, thank you so very much for taking the time to listen to our show. And we want to say welcome to all the new listeners that have found us along the way. I can tell you that the interview you did with David Smalley over on Dogma Debate was quite interesting there, Jerry D.
Oh, no. Oh,
I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to listen to that wonderful 10-minute interview that he did on Dogma Debate.
Don't go listen. You already follow us, so don't go listen.
I have always said, you guys know, ever since this show started, that I have always said that I'm Ed. Oh, well, y'all go listen to that interview. I think it's episode 248 or something like that. It's the most recent, I think. Go over and listen to that.
You know, Bobby, that I had to love up on David.
Boy.
You know I didn't mean it. You know I love you more.
I know. Second fiddle. I understand.
You got to dance with who brought you. You know what I'm saying?
Boy, do I understand that. Well, it was great to hear that interview. And if there's any listeners that are brand new to our small podcast here, thank you very much for joining us. We hope that you continue to enjoy the content. I can tell you that you are the reason we do what we do. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I know I speak for Jerry when I say that. So absolutely. So thank you very much. If you do want to continue to follow this show, you can find us on Facebook.com/Hope After Faith Podcast. Now, the one thing that we haven't really mentioned on the air, and I realized it today when I was putting my show notes together, was we haven't really told anybody about our closed group called Hope After Faith Listener Page on Facebook. That is where all of our listeners go together and they communicate and they get together and talk about things. And Jerry and I will often get on there and take part in the conversation as well. If you want to join a closed group, go over to Hope After Faith Listener Page on Facebook. Ask to join, and Jerry or I will gladly welcome you into the fold. Also on Twitter, you can find us at Hope After Faith on Twitter, or you can email the show at hopeafterfaithpodcast@gmail.com. Jerry, if you will, please tell these wonderful people where they can find you about your wonderful Team DeWitt. By the way, still going good. I enjoyed your post today.
Oh, did you? Wonderful.
I did. So, guys, if you are not a part of Team DeWitt, I can tell you right now, you are missing out.
Well, thank you. If anybody's interested in finding out what Bobby's talking about, you can simply go to jerrydewitt.net. It will take you to our Patreon page where we try to put out something for your entertainment or inspiration every day. It's been a while since we loaded up any new gaming videos with Paul and I, but it's because I've been away from the house. We're hoping to reestablish that as soon as possible. Been trying to make up the difference with some extra messages every day. But I hope that you'll find something there that you enjoy. We would love your support. And if there's anyone out there that's looking for a life coach, I don't know why I struggle to say those words, but I do. But if you're looking for a life coach, I do have some openings coming up in the last session of this year. So just reach out to me, and maybe we can work together and make a brighter future for all of us.
Heck yeah. And let me tell y'all something, folks. I'm not signed up for the life coaching, but Jerry gives me life coaching almost every day. Trust me, you can ask Jerry. When I have an issue, I call Jerry.
And you do me as well, though. You're there for me as well, though.
Yeah. So I can assure you that if you need some type of coaching or mentoring, give Jerry a holler. I promise you, it'd be well worth it. I am lucky enough that I get to experience it daily, and you can too. Well, our closing song, as always, is called "Last Prayer." It is by Chris Beeland. That's Beland. You can find his music on beeland.bandcamp.com. I know he'll be glad that you guys are listening. Well, as always, we dedicate this song to the memory of Samantha Bannister. Team hashtag Team Tiny Dancer forever. For Secular Media Group and Hope After Faith. Until next week, be brave, our friends.
It's lonely when you fade away in a lifetime. lonely when you're out in space with no lifeline. And slowly then you turn around and you notice the length and the time when your heart stops beating. Oh, why won't you come settle down? Stop wasting your time and your mind going on believing. No, this won't change. Lord knows you know I can't tell where I'm going, to heaven or falling in hell are my predictions. I only speak what I have heard, and the sound of your words condemn my soul while my soul is here.